both sides come up with a description of reality that coincides and can look equivalent to each other. So it appears that the Buddhists certainly have no monopoly on understanding the nature of reality. But it would be more correct to say the Buddhists have no monopoly on a description of reality. And there's a big difference between understanding reality and how to describe reality. Now, two descriptions can be very similar and yet come from very dissimilar understandings. And that's what I'm going to talk about a little bit about. Because sometimes it's easy to become confused by a description that appears to be the same as the description between the two camps, scientific camp and the spiritualist camp, of the nature of mind and reality and their relationship can seem very similar. But when you really get down to it, the understanding that those descriptions come from are very different. And that makes all the difference in the world, because the understanding arises from correct motivation to investigate to begin with. So basically, what the Buddhists are saying is that, yeah, you can describe reality as this or that, but you really won't understand it as this or that. And that's because the understanding is not rooted in experience. And the reason that it's not rooted in experience for either a Buddhist or a scientist is that the motivation isn't arising from a altruistic ideal to gain awareness of the mind's nature so that one can benefit others. So to generate the mind of great compassion. Whether we're a Buddhist or a scientist, if we do not have that motivation, that altruistic ambition to attain enlightenment for the sake of others, to benefit others, oneself and others, then without that, we can come up with a very nice description of reality. But as far as our inner workings go, our inner peace and depth of that peace, depth of that awareness goes, we'll be far off the mark. Hindu Dharma. And anyone who goes on a spiritual quest that's truly spiritual in their own tradition, within their own tradition. The seers of the past, they chose their path to awaken other people, out of compassion for the ignorance of others. That's their motivation. And they saw that the only way they can realize that motivation is by becoming awake themselves. They knew that they cannot awaken others if they're not awake themselves. So the primary motivation is to awaken oneself so that one can awaken others. And that the key is that second part, the motivation to awaken others. Now, quantum physics and mathematics can present a very good description, but unfortunately And the description can sound very Buddhist in many ways. But when you get down to the really nitty-gritty, it lacks the motivation of compassion. If you don't have that, all you're going to have is a description. And that description won't mean anything to you or anybody else as far as their own self-realization goes. Liberating themselves from ignorance, fundamental ignorance. The proof of this is not far to seek. If we look at the lives of scientists, some of the very best ever, that have changed our modern world in the last century or two. Some have ended up in insane asylums by the last 10 or 20 years of their lives. And one starved himself to death because he was afraid of being poisoned. Examples are not far to seek of people that have, through their brilliance, have missed the mark and actually driven themselves absolutely crazy. Putting aside those exceptions, because that's not the norm, within the scientific community you find very, very, very few that have confined themselves to the scientific community that have really attained peace of mind, or been able to give peace of mind or instill peace of mind in others. So they can influence other scientists and bring about breakthroughs in various aspects of physics, quantum mechanics, and so forth. But we have to ask ourselves, do those breakthroughs actually make anybody happier, more peaceful, more compassionate? If you look through any Buddhist text and do a search of compassion, any text, any sutra, it'll come up dozens of times, if not hundreds of times, the word compassion. If you look at a physics text, scientific text, a text on quantum mechanics, and you search for the word compassion, you're not very unlikely to find it. So, in summing up, motivation is everything. And it's not just the motivation for Buddhists, also not just scientists that have to have the right motivation. Buddhists, of course, do too. As Buddhists, if we're practicing meditation and we're just counting how many incense sticks we can sit through, that's not going to get us very far. We have to ourselves generate great compassion through our practice. That should be the motivation of our practice. We should feel that compassion and love inside and have that as our motivation. If we sit for a half hour with a heart full of compassion, able to generate compassion, that will really be transformative for ourselves. So Buddhists have to also generate compassion for their practice to, bring about happiness and peace. So quite a few scientists and physicists have awoken to this, and they see that, well, it's right, what the Buddhists say is right. I mean, you can push your pencil around so many times to get so many great equations, but in order to be happy is another matter. How to be happy and at peace, and have a heart of love and joy for others. So that's what I wanted to say, and I said it.